For a 14-year-old boy growing up in a small religious town in Montana, sex was this forbidden monster knocking at the door. So the day that I was up in our attic and I discovered this book called The Joy of Sex, I felt like I had just won the lottery. And I opened up this book. Here it even had pictures in it. Even the sounds of the words got me quivering. Like vulva. I didn't know what was happening to me. And pretty soon I came to a section called homosexuality. Now this threw everything out of whack. I was reading this stuff and I thought about my best friend Frankie. I thought, would I ever want to do anything from this book with Frankie? That was the moment I first realized, the hell no, I didn't want Frankie. I preferred the vulvas. It's just how I am, okay? Well, the next day I go to school. I tell Frankie about this book and that it's got pictures of female body parts. Frankie came to my house that night begging to borrow that book. I finally said, okay. He smuggled it home. Now, I thought he wanted to look at the female body parts, but when Frankie returned that book, I could tell that the pages were worn and bent in that other section. And I didn't know what to think about that. As time went on, it became apparent that Frankie was different than the rest of us boys in that town. The rest of us loved to play hockey. We loved to go hunting and fishing. But Frankie loved art. He did a lot of drawings and paintings. Despite our differences, Frankie and I were inseparable friends. So he had all these deep ideas about life, and we could sit and talk about things for hours. It was great. By the time we got into high school, the other guys were starting to call Frankie a homo behind his back. At first I stuck up for him. I said, come on, guy, Frankie's all right. Then one day a couple guys came up to me. They said, the way you're always defending Frankie, we think you might be a homo too. Well, in that little town, in that day and age, being accused of that was like being condemned to hell. So I buckled under to peer pressure. I began to avoid Frankie like the plague. One day Frankie came up to me. He said, what's going on, man? He said, we were the best of friends. He said, why are you avoiding me? I said, Frankie, it's because I'm a real man and you're a fag. Well, Frankie was pretty much friendless after that. I mean, he would stick to himself, do his art. I'd play hockey, go hunting and fishing. But I missed the guy. I missed him, but I just couldn't risk associating with him. Well, after I graduated high school, I joined the Army. A couple of years later, I got out and came back home, and I ran into Frankie's sister. She told me that Frankie had moved to Seattle to become an artist. And she told me that there was this weird new virus going around. And all of Frankie's friends were catching it, and they were dying. And she said, I think Frankie's got it too. And she said, I think Frankie wouldn't mind it too much if you were to give him a call. She gave me his number. Well, I put it off, made excuses. Finally, I said, I gotta call Frankie. I called him up. He sounded really weak, but as soon as I heard his voice, all these memories kept flooding back. And it was like old times. And we talked for a long time. And right then, he wasn't gay Frankie, he was my childhood friend Frankie. Toward the end of the conversation, I start trying to apologize for being such an asshole to him. But he cut me off. He said, Erik, he said, it's not you. He said, it's the world. He said, the world won't let two guys who happen to be on opposite sides of this fence just reach across and be friends. And he said, but why not? A couple weeks later, Frankie's sister called me, told me that Frankie had just died of AIDS. And she told me that he wanted me to be one of the pallbearers, which I proudly did. So ever since then, if I know a guy happens to be gay, and I want to be his friend, I just reach over that fence, and I'm his friend. And I like to think that somewhere out there, Frankie is smiling down on me.